Welcome to this tea break tutorial in which we're going to discuss the subject of blocks and block references. What they are, how we create them, how we can edit them, how we can use them within our drawings to make life a little easier for ourselves, and what their properties are and the advantages of using them are. To start off with, we'll explore our menus and see where they come. So they're under the main Caddie application, and if we come down to advanced objects, we'll see that we have some tools here for inserting blocks, making blocks, editing, managing, and so on. We can also clip blocks as well, but more of that a little later. In the first instance, we're going to look at what we have here in our drawing, just a simple little illustration of a window. We're going to turn that into a block, and then we'll explore what that is. So if I just drag my selection rectangle around it and select them all there, you'll see that there are 143 lines. So one of the advantages of blocks is that we can slim down our drawings in terms of memory, and the way we're going to do that is, as I say, by creating a block. Just right click onto the context sensitive menu, and under make we have make block. So we have the other options as well, but here we're going to choose make block. Now we can give our new block a name, so I'll call it window 01. I can give it an origin, so I can snap onto a point at which I want to insert it in my drawing, and Caddie will log those points from the pick. Then we have some options here, so we can replace all of those 143 objects that we had within our drawing with just a single one. That will be a reference to the block reference, an internal reference symbol, call it what you will. We could actually just delete the original object, so effectively just transfer all the information about the 143 objects to a reference database that's carried within the drawing, so not having the original objects there at all, but we can just deploy it then using the insert block. Or we could retain the original object, so we still have those 143 objects, but we have the table from which we can insert the reference to the block within our drawing as well. We're selecting the replace original object, so we're just OK that. So it doesn't look any different, but you'll see down here it says block created, so they're on our command line. And when I select it, what we see, and if I just move away from here, is that we have just one grip point for dealing with our block. And we also have things like scaling factors, so we could make that 2, for instance, and you'll see that it actually deformed it. So we have unidirectional scaling. Maybe not so great to use with blocks for windows here, but for things like trees and landscaping, absolutely fantastic. But we're going to just drop that back to its original scale. You can see you have rotation angles as well, so you can turn them around. Again, not such a useful thing with our window here, but if you are trying to get a little bit of feeling into a site plan drawing, just to turn the tree plan symbols around, absolutely fantastic. So what we have is effectively a reference to those original 143 objects, and of course if we were to take that and we'll just copy that around now, so I just choose copy and we'll copy it from our point there, and then we'll just drop it in. I'll turn on the polar tracking so we can line them up nicely. So if you haven't got hold of the polar tracking yet within Caddie, then get yourself onto the downloads and get download for build 3 Caddie 19 downloaded. So we have here, instead of 143 objects times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on, what we have is effectively just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus the original 143 and that one. So that would be 8 plus 143 rather than 143 times 8 objects. So you can see that our drawings have the potential to get much smaller, much faster. Less operations for Caddie to be doing, less hard work for the machine to be doing. The other advantages are that if we choose to change our block, so we want to substitute it, or maybe we want to just tweak how it represents. Here, for example, we see that we've got the the hatching lines sticking through or showing through beneath our windows. Not great, and not a good thing to have on a presentation drawing. So if we select our original block here, I'll just move it out of the way of the icon there. If we just right click, we'll see that we have the ability to edit block. We can also edit it as a new version too. But we'll go with edit block, and having done that, we'll just press escape and then a regen, and we'll see we're back to the original line. So that's reintroduced those original lines within our drawing. We can then use maybe the opaque tool, so we'll choose inside. So this is going to put a mask around there. We can abort that. We'll select our opaque and then just move that to the back plane. So in other words, behind all of the original objects. Press escape, and then we'll end edit block, and what we see is that all of those blocks now have the same properties. So they've all taken on the opaque, so that when we take those blocks, we can move it along. You can see that all hatching is still there behind, but we have our block just obscuring those. And just make sure that you're in the 2D wireframe if you're using the opaques, incidentally. So that gives us a very nice, easy way of making fairly major alterations to drawings and schemes very quickly. Of course, it doesn't end there, because if we were to introduce some more blocks within our drawing, now we could create them in that way, or maybe for people who've used the symbol library, we could bring in, say, a window such as this, or we'll go for a slightly smaller one. If we introduce it as a block rather than a symbol, this will actually bring it in as a block in its own right. So there is our block. So we have a new block within our drawing. And in fact, if we go to insert block, we'll see that will now come into the list. So we've got a second block there. And we could insert that and insert more of them. So that's now internal to the drawing. Exploring our menu on the left, we also have the ability to replace blocks. So having got blocks within our drawing, we could either do them by name, or we could pick. So we could say we want to replace that window with that window. And we could do everything, or we could draw rectangles and polygons around to show us which ones we're going to replace, or we could do single. When we do single, it highlights all of the possible options for us, and then we can just move around our drawing. And then when you just do a regen, we see that we now have our drawing with the new windows included. So a very quick way to change the way that your drawings look. Now, we've explored the subject of the insert symbol. That's not the only way to get blocks, standard Caddie blocks, into your drawing. You also have the component manager. Now, if you haven't used the component manager before, view and component manager will switch it on, and our block libraries are contained within the Caddie folders. They're under Advanced Computer Solutions, and that is under Program Data. So just go and search out those block libraries as well. We have lots of symbols to go out, lots of goodies to go out there. You see the list is rather extensive, but I've chosen here the trees. So I come down to our trees, and we can pick something suitable. So if we just drag and bring over our drawing there, we can drag that into there, just drag and drop. Very nice and easy to use. You also have, as I mentioned before, the option of changing the scaling factor. So if the tree was a little larger relative to its spread, then we can do that. Relative to the canopy, we can do that. We can also move things to the back plane. So very easy to use as far as moving things in front and behind objects. And as well, what we can do is we can also utilize things such as clipping. So if you wanted to clip an object, so if we take our tree for example, and we wanted to clip that tree, we could define a clipping boundary. It says indicate the block reference, so there it is, indicate the clipping boundary. I'll just finish it off there. So you can see we can dictate exactly what we see of our block references too, and under the clip reference we can also adjust that. We can switch it off and so on. So switch the clipping off on there, and we're back to our original drawing. Right, other things, and this particular drawing here, site plan, really does illustrate very nicely how much quicker it can be and how much more concise drawings can be by using block references. So here we've got a block reference of a tree. Now if we just copy that across, I'll just copy that across into a little bit of space there. If we edit that block, what we see when we select the objects, and we see down here on the bottom of our Caddie screen here, it says there are 46 objects there. So if you imagine how many times those 46 objects will be repeated, that's an awful lot of processing needs to be done unnecessarily. When we look at our objects as well, we'll also notice that the pen colour, so if we pick our polylines here for instance, or we can go back to the multiple, we have a pen colour, they're all defined by layer. So that's both the pen colour and the line style. So just remembering to end editing that block, if we look up at our layers now, we can see that we've got a couple of layers here where the colours are defined, as are the line style there. So we can say exactly what we want the trees to look like, dependent upon the layer or the blocks that the layers are drawn upon. So this means that if we were to take that tree and just move it to a different layer, we see that it actually changes the way that tree is depicted. And of course we can do this for as many trees as we like. So you can just pick on those, and we could change the rotation angle for instance, as we discussed before, but we can also change the layer that they're on, and that will modify how those trees appear in our drawing. So a very nice way of being able to use the same information and just tailor it to the presentation and the information we're trying to get across. We can also search out blocks within our drawings. So if anybody's used Quick Select before, they'll be familiar with this, but blocks feature within the Quick Select. If we right click and go to Quick Select, we can choose block references. Here I'm set to selecting all that are in the scope. We can choose them by name, and if we have the original one there, we can select all of those, and you see there they all are highlighted, 183 of them. And if we go to layering and display, we can display just the ones selected, for instance. So a very quick way of identifying all of those. And of course we could change using the block replace, as we saw before. We're just going to turn everything back on there. And as I say, we can use the replace block. So we could use the replace to replace our original. We could do that with pick. We could use it for a coloured one, and we could do that for an area within a rectangle, for instance. So we could just grab over our rectangle and it will change them all instantly. And then, having got our new modified site plan, we could even go to the lengths of counting up those blocks, so we could schedule from them as well. So we could pick the trees that we're interested in, so we could pick the coloured ones and the original ones, or use the double chevrons to take all blocks there. We can do the scope, we can dictate our table settings, OK to that, and then we can put ourselves a table down here, so we'll just drop it in there. Just zooming in on that, so we see that we get we get not only a symbol of the original, the name and a description if we have that in with the count of the number within our drawing. So a very, very quick way of scheduling from your drawings. So now we'll move on and have a look at some other types of scheduling. If anybody hasn't explored the SA Arch tools, SA Arch application, in fact, if you need to load the application, you just go to Load Application and it will be within the list there. So that will give us our tools, and we have some scheduling tools. Now we have the Sans tools, which I've docked on the right hand side here, which give us lighting, so the Sans water and lighting. And here I'm going to just drop in some ceiling lights, but I can say how many days per year these are used, what wattage these are, so we can select from here where they're going into and the time, the amount of hours that they're on per day. So I'm just going to grab those and then we'll just drop onto the points that I put in there. So we'll just put a few in there and then we'll just schedule that. So I'll go for our schedule and it says indicate the objects to schedule. So I just drag my rectangle over there and we'll just make that a little bigger so we can actually see what we're doing. And you can see that we have not only the reference, as these all got reference numbers, so they can see the reference number there. You get the type, you get the power, the amount of time on per day and the days used in the year. And if we wanted to edit any of those, we could go to our schedule table and we could zoom to a specific object within that table. So if we wanted to go to number 8, for instance, that will take us directly to our lighting there. So we could make any amendments that were necessary. So there we are. We have a very useful way of using the actually the AEC scheduling, all again related to blocks. Taking things on a little further, I just wanted to explore some of the things to be aware of when utilising blocks within your drawings. Naming is very important. So if we go back to our object properties, we have a block name here. Now, if you imagine a block as a style, so if you were to take a block and utilise it within another drawing, then it's important that block isn't already present in there unless you're going to rename it. So here I'm going to copy my block, so I'll just copy my block there and I'm going to edit that as a new block. So we've got a window block object there, that our name, but I'm going to delete that and just call it block. So I'll call it block, OK to that. So when we just end editing that block, we'll see that it's just called block. Now if we go back to a different drawing, so maybe go back to our drawing here, and we'll take our tree and we'll just copy that. So I'll just copy that to the side. So there it is. We'll put that one back to its original shape and we will edit that as a new block and we'll call this block as well. So blocks are essentially styles within your drawing. But if I were to try to take that tree now, and what we'll do is we'll copy that to the clipboard, copy it by a point there, go back to our other drawing and then just paste in, we get a warning. So Caddie is actually doing us a favour here because it's telling us there could be a conflict. If we were to ignore that and not rename it, we'll get a problem. If we were to automatically rename, then we won't be aware of the problem. But if we don't do that, so we say no, what we get instead of our tree is a window. And if we took our window, so we copy that to the clipboard by position here, and we go back into our original drawing here, right click and paste from the clipboard, say no once again, we get a tree. So it is a style within the drawing, so do be aware of that. So when you're naming your blocks, make sure you name them uniquely. But this time, if we do exactly the same thing again, right click and copy our block to the clipboard, go back to our drawing, right click and paste, and say yes, then we get our window. So just examining that window, so we'll just select the window there, we notice that it is now block 1 rather than the original block that we chose. So Caddie has renamed that for us automatically to prevent us having that particular problem. Other things to be aware of is that in terms of layering, so I copied one earlier and you'll notice that this one is window block on original layers, and this one where I've copied onto layer 0. Now, in terms of the way the layering and display works, so if we say layer display, so we just go through our layers, we'll see that the one on the right, where all the original objects are on layer 0, displays when we use the layer that the block reference is on. So with the other window, we need to have the internal layers effectively for the objects shown. So a very good idea. So just go back to all layers there. So when you're utilizing blocks, draw all the original objects on layer 0 and then include the block reference on the layer that you want to use through the layer display. Now worry not if you've already got blocks that you've created and you think, oh dear, I haven't done that. You don't need to go and edit all of the blocks. If you go to the Caddie tools and we come down to the advanced objects, there is a by layer option here which changes the objects in blocks, so you can simply provide the destination layer that you wish and then point at the block in question. Other things that may be of interest, if you go to the edit tools and your mapping pens, there is a remap objects in blocks option too, so do be aware of that. So that's under the global edits, map pens and remap colors. So another thing there. One final thing that we'd like to deal with is attributes. Now attributes are very useful, often employed by surveyors and the like for including, say, level data or information about, going back to landscaping, tree varieties or canopies for instance. But here we're going to look at how we can utilize the attributes within title blocks. So if we look at our sheet here, I'll see that I've already set some of these up. We have just lines and text here, so we'll see that's end text, but this is actually an attribute definition, and we'll include one here as well. So back to our advanced objects, we'll go for our attributes, we'll create an attribute. It says what do we want to label this up as? Well, this will be our, say, drawing number, and we could leave it as tag, but if I put drawing number in there, and when it comes to recognizing what that field will be, we'll just copy and paste it into there as well. This is going to be the height of the text effectively in there, so we'll OK that, and then we'll just place that down, and I've got a little marker there with a construction point, so there it is, and if I select on there, we'll see that we've got our tag. What I'm now going to do, I'm going to create that as a block. So we'll right click and make block, and we'll call this A3 attribute title. We can leave the origin as 0 and we'll replace all of those original objects. As soon as I press OK, I'm given attributes to change. Well, I could change those, and if I just go through and type in a value here, we see that we get the values changing in our title block. We can also add this as a title block to our title sheets. And the way we do that is File, Save Other, add title sheets to title sheets drawing. So we could give this a name, so we'll call this Attributes A3, and that's now in our title sheet drawing. So when we want to go to another sheet, so we could set up our sheet, so right click, sheet setup, choose our printer, so I'll just be consistent there, so an A3, OK to that, and then we just go to the T sheet, so in the sheets tools we just go to T sheets, and there's the one that we've just created, OK to that, and you see we get the attributes in there, so we can put our values in there, including the date, the client, so this is millions for instance, and we'll see that that will be into our title box straight away. So a very simple, very easy way to make including text and titles within your drawings. So a few different things there on blocks, block references, block attributes. Hopefully that's cleared up a few mysteries and also shown you a few ways that you might incorporate them and make it a real difference to the speed with which you can work. Thanks for listening in and watching in on the T-Break tutorial on blocks and block references.